He criticized Dad for hoarding junk, then finds out what he really had. As he looked at the enormous amount of boxes and pieces cluttering the attic, James wondered how his father had managed to collect so much junk. When he was still alive, James and his mother had always reproached him for this behavior. Now James himself was in charge of getting rid of the mess. His father had deservedly earned the nickname the Hoarder, as he was called by his friends and family. However, they would never suspect that in the midst of that pile of trinkets and antiques, George Davis was actually keeping a great treasure. When Davis's son began the cleanup, he came across all sorts of antique artifacts and collectibles. His father showed a special penchant for the old and worn stuff. James made groups of things. He kept what could be used or perhaps had some value and discarded in the hamper the many items he considered useless. The task became time-consuming and took several days to sort through everything. One of those days, rummaging through his late father's belongings, he came across a modest wooden box resting under some old blankets. The box opened easily, so James soon dismissed the idea that it held anything important. However, the contents appeared to be some kind of carefully wrapped figure. As he unwrapped the small package, he came face to face with the piercing eyes of a miniature soldier. At first glance, it looked like a toy. He removed it, looking for any logos or markings that would give him some clue as to find what it really was, but he found nothing. After examining it without getting a manufacturer's name or any other clue as to its origin, he thought it would be best to take it to an expert. James then went to a jewelry store. The store's jeweler looked carefully at the piece for a few minutes that for James seemed to be infinite. She looked at every inch of the soldier in detail. With special interest, she analyzed the tiny eyes, then with a straight face said to the man, "I'll give you $800,000 for it right here and now." James was perplexed at the woman's words. He waited for her to laugh and say that it was just a joke, that the little soldier was nothing more than a child's toy. However, she kept looking him straight in the eye and held the doll as if she had no intention of letting it go. He became nervous, and his palms began to sweat. There was someone willing to give him a huge sum of money for the dusty figure he found in the attic. He understood that if the jeweler offered him such a sum of money, surely there was someone willing to pay much more. He could, however, be wrong. He had to restrain his impulse to say yes to the huge sum. To the jeweler's chagrin, James refused the juicy offer and grabbed his statue and left the store without hesitation. He got home and locked the figurine in the safety of his safe. How much could it really cost? He had to figure out the origin of the piece, and soon he was making some calls. He contacted different jewelers and experts in the field. A soldier with gold clothes and brilliant blue eyes had to have a story behind him. He gave a detailed description of the statue to each person he called, and that's how the answers came. Details such as the gold braiding on the soldier's clothing, the two-headed eagle engraved on the figure's harness were elements that soon gave one of the jewelers the information behind James's find. The value of this discovery was not just based on the eyes, which were two genuine sapphires. The buckle on the boots and the medals on his vest added a considerable amount to the total value. As he learned firsthand from the experts, the statuette was made in Russia by Nikolai Nikolaevich, who was one of the loyal bodyguards of the Empress Alexandra Fyodorovna. There were only 50 pieces like it in the world, and collectors everywhere would be willing to pay a lot for it. With this in mind, James thought it would be best to contact an auction house. A good auctioneer will always seek to highlight the historical attributes, components, and workmanship of a piece. In this way, he can ensure the interest of the highest bidder. However, Colin Stair, James' auctioneer, didn't have to worry about further explanation of the statuette. Within minutes, everyone in the room was bidding in a race to get their hands on it. In just a quarter of an hour, the statuette went from the starting price of $150,000 to being sold to London jeweler Wartsky for a whopping $6 million. A spokesman for Wartsky later stated that the purchase of the figurine is a continuation of our long tradition acquiring Russian imperial works of art. Thanks to Wartsky, more relevant facts about the piece became available. The figure had been commissioned by Tsar Nicholas II as a gift to the Empress. The last Tsar of Imperial Russia called upon the famous gold egg maker Fabergé to make the soldier. Much later, American businessman Armand Hammer bought it for $2,250. It was on this occasion the last time anything was known about the soldier's whereabouts. Now it had come to light again after being found by James in his father's attic. When the Register Star asked Wartsky about his interest in buying the magnificent piece, the house replied, Wartsky was Armand Hammer's main rival in the 1920s and 30s. with the purchase of imperial treasures confiscated from the Soviet government. They added, "That's a lot of years to expect to outdo your rival."